All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this training. And this is the Blue Snowball microphones that we have in the boxes. I gave you guys 2 of them and laptops. And the first thing you do to record is you just plug into the Snowball in the back, and then it has a USB port, and you just plug it into the USB of your laptop. You got to start the microphone, plug it in first before you open the Audacity program. So now I'm going to share the screen so that we can show you on the Audacity program we have on the computers. They should be all set up with Audacity and the bottom toolbar. But I believe on your computers, they're also on the desktop shortcuts for the Audacity program and other things that you might want to use. But it's the icon with the blue headphones and the yellow track and the red waveform in it. You just open up the program by clicking on it. And if you already have the Snowball microphone plugged in, it will recognize the microphone as one of your options for bringing in your audio. And you'll get a lot better audio using a USB microphone. So we're encouraging everybody to use them now. The first thing that happens is this welcome to Audacity pop-up. It says how to get help. These are our support methods. You can just say, okay, so that you could have that available if you're interested in looking at some of their tutorials and their information. You can always look at some of that, but to get rid of it and just have the Audacity screen, you can just say, okay. And now you're looking at where you basically just have to choose the audio source, which is up here on the second to the right tab. It says microphone high definition audio. That's my in the computer audio. But if I click the arrow to the right, I can click on it and you can see that it says microphone W ball, which is the Snowball. And yours might actually say Snowball on it too. I'm used to it saying the whole word, but apparently it's just going to say the W ball, but it's clearly the Snowball because of how it's written. Anyway, and that basically makes the source of the microphone no longer the internal microphone in your laptop, but it's now your USB mic. When you speak into the mic, you want to get nice and close. I often set it kind of on the laptop even, and just kind of get nice and close to it. It will pick it up farther away. It'll pick up your audio, but you'll get a lower audio quality and you'll get more of your ambient sound, because if you're recording up close, then you'll make sure your audio levels are correct. And when you do that, it will have the ambient sound and your room sound will be much lower because it's mostly picking up just your voice when you're up close. So the first thing I do is I click on this button. It says click to start monitoring on the top middle of the Audacity window. And when you click that, you can see now the audio levels and how it's hearing me pretty darn good. At this, underneath these audio level, this is like the meter up here. Underneath, you have 2 slide bars, and one, if you hover on it, you'll see it says it's recording volume. That is how loud it's going to be bringing in your audio. And then on the right side is the playback volume. So I usually don't mess with the playback volume much, but the audio volume is important. And if it's going into the red, you probably want to bring down the audio volume a little bit, and you just click and drag the button and you can bring down the audio volume and you can watch it. Now you see it's not going in the red quite as much. Doesn't take much. I only went down like 3 points, and I feel pretty good about that level. I always like to actually record so that I can hear excuse me, see the waveform and exactly how high it really is. And basically these buttons on the left top corner are just like any playback buttons on any audio device that you would work on. And it starts with pause, play, stop, rewind, fast forward, and record. So the red button is the record button, and I can hit the record and it will start recording, and you can see that I got a pretty nice little waveform. And I'm actually not super close. I'm you know, probably 10 inches away from my microphone. And you want a nice fat waveform. This might be even a little higher than you might want it, because if you get excited and you start being like, oh yeah, all of a sudden you can see that I've peaked. So you might want to even take it down a little bit farther, just slide it over, and then I'm recording and you can see that it's down a little bit. You want it to look healthy. You don't want it to be tiny. Like one thing is, if I took it way down here, you could see, you see how small that waveform is right there? You do not want that, because it's definitely too small, right? You want it to be a fairly healthy waveform. Usually about 80, 90 is pretty decent. I would go up to 90, and now I'm looking at it and I feel like that's pretty good, you know, at least that size of a waveform. And you kind of get to know your kids. You'll begin to understand some people go really tiny and they talk pretty quietly. And then when they get excited, they talk much louder. And you're like, oh, some people have a pretty big span of the way they communicate as far as them getting louder and softer, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So if that's the case, you want to bring it in a little bit less high, because what you don't want is the distortion. That's the biggest thing. If you get too loud, you will have distortion. If it's too quiet, you've got to amplify it like crazy to get it to come in. It's not really as quality as you want. You can do things in post, but it's not as good as you might wish it was. It's best to start with a nice audio file. Anybody who works with audio will be like, if you get it right at the beginning, it makes your life much easier later on. So that's just about it. And then you hit the stop button and you've officially have a track that you can replay. Let me move this around so I can scroll with the scroll bar at the bottom and scroll back to the beginning of what we just did. And then when I click on the waveform, I can use the arrow keys to get it right back to the very beginning. Oh, I must not have got it quite there. I thought I had it back. There we go. And then when I click at the beginning, I want to go way to the very beginning. So I get back to the very start. And then you can hit the space bar to start it playing and stop it playing, or you can use the controls up here and you can play it. Record, and it will start recording, and you can see that I got a pretty nice little waveform. So basically that is the gist of getting a recording. In order to get rid of, like you can see at the very beginning, there might be something I want to get rid of. And there's a couple different things that's really good to know. I can also send you some other tutorials that we have, that some people have done some trainings that we have recorded already. But as a quick information, a little bit of quick information about how to alter things. If you hit your control button and you hit the number 1, it will zoom in so that you see the recording up close, and you can see this is maybe the beginning that I would want to get rid of, because it's before I start my word, and you can see where the word starts in the waveform. If I click on it and then I hold the button, hold and drag across it, I can turn it white like that, and that means that area is selected, and I can hit the backspace or delete button and get rid of it. And so that's how to get rid of, and you can do that anywhere. I did that at the beginning. I could also do it over here, you know, and I could just click, drag across, and delete. So that's how you delete any part that you want to delete. And basically what you're working on is the tracks in an Audacity file, right? This is not your finished audio file, because if you were to save it, which we'll go ahead and do, let me think, do I want to show you like noise reduction? I should. Okay, let me show you noise reduction before we save it, and then we'll do that. So if you look at this, you can see this is something that is not me talking. I'll select it and I'll play it. It's me taking a breath, actually. And so one of the things I do is I select it, and then I can go to the effect menu, and I can say noise reduction. And then I say, get the noise profile. And then I have picked that sound of my breath as something that I would want to get rid of. It's part of a profile that it recognizes. If I double click on the track, everything within my track will turn white. I can select the entire thing all at the same time. So you can see I double clicked, it all turned white. If I wanted to see it, I want to zoom back out. I probably should have said this earlier, I'm sorry. But if I say Control 3, I can zoom back out, and I can zoom so far out that I can see from 0, see how the timeline is on the top of the track. It starts at 0, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute. We recorded for 2 minutes and 30 seconds, basically. And I can see that I've selected everything. If I click outside the track, I can unselect it. And then if I click back in it, double click, I've selected it again, right? Once I've selected everything, I know that I'm going to affect the entire track, and I'm going to get rid of all those breath sounds. And I can go back to this effect menu at the top, say noise reduction, and say okay. And it will apply the noise reduction. And then you can see my track kind of altered slightly, and it just means that a bunch of those sounds will be a lot less easy to hear. And noise reduction is a way to make your ambient room sound and whatever you have going on that is like a hum. If you have a hum behind your audio, which a lot of it's just the noise in a computer even can create a hum. It'll make your audio much, much cleaner sounding at the end. It will sound really nice, and it doesn't take much to do it. So it's worth showing you how to do that. So once you have everything just how you want it, like I would say, this is where it was too quiet. So this is kind of, you know, if I was getting rid of things, I'd delete everything. I'd make sure that I don't have anything blown out. I can see kind of what my whole thing looks like. I listen to it. It sounds just how I want it. I can do one of two things. If I'm ready and I'm done, I can save it as an MP3 or a WAV file. And if I want to still work on it, I would save it as an Audacity project file. So when I say file on the top left, I have save project as one option and export as a different option. And when I say export, it will give me choices of what I want to export the file as. If you don't have music in your file, then exporting it as an MP3 is perfect. It's a small file. It doesn't use as much room. It'll upload faster. There's a lot of reasons. If you were doing music, you want to save it as a WAV, because then it will be a better quality sounding file. It doesn't compress it as much, and the music will sound better. So if I want to save my project, which I kind of recommend people save the project, at least for now, but they're large files. So if you start using up room in your computer, know to go back and erase the ones you're finished working on, and you'll get a lot of room back in your computer. But if you save the project and something goes wrong and you're like, oh, I didn't realize I left something in I didn't want in. If you don't save the project, then you'll have to start with the MP3, and it will lose some sound quality. The more you do that, or the WAV file even, it'll lose some sound quality. The more you import it and work on it and then export it back out. But this way, everything is there, and you can have multiple tracks. Because like, if you were doing this and you wanted music underneath, then you would make a new track. And when you make a new track and you have multiple tracks, that all gets compressed down to one audio file when you export it into an MP3 or a WAV file. Whereas when you have a project file, you can come back, you could change the music and change things around in all your multiple layers of tracks, and be able to have all these options left for working on it still. So that's the difference between the two. I can show you one other thing before we actually export, is if you want to bring in some music, then, and you want to bring in, or you want to bring in another audio file. You're saying that people might be hooking you up with some different content that you would add. Then you would add a track, and you would go to the tracks menu and you would say tracks, add new, and you would pick a stereo track. Most music is going to come in as a stereo track. If somebody gives you a mono track, we can show you how to turn it into a stereo track. But you cannot bring in a mono track into a stereo track. You have to either be bringing in your music as a stereo track. It has to be brought in and inserted into a stereo track in the program. And so basically that just means there's two tracks that are part of it, and one is a left hand and one is a right hand. So when you listen in your car and you hear a speaker on the left and right hand side, it's a stereo track. Some of that music is coming in on the top level of a stereo track, and some of it would be coming in the bottom, and they're panning it right and left to make it so that it's a dynamic experience. So that's what the difference is between a mono and a stereo track. If I'm gonna bring in something, I'm gonna say file, I'm gonna open, I'm doing this kind of fast because I know you can go back in the recording and watch it again. That's so if I'm looking for a file, I'm gonna go to wherever that file is downloaded, be it a music file or something else. I'm gonna pick this MIPA Music Mentor interview, and I'm gonna just highlight it and open it. Oh, I just realized. Yeah, I got it. It's kind of long. It'll take just a second. I probably could have picked a shorter one. But so basically it's opened another window here. I'll make this window smaller in a second, and you'll see that it opened a whole new Audacity window. And when it opens up, oh, see now, this came in as a mono track. So I won't be able to import it straight in. It's actually kind of good that it did, because I can show you this one last piece that might be useful. But I'm going to click on the top right window to make this window smaller so you can see that this is a whole new Audacity window, and it imported it into this whole new window. The one in the back is the one I was working on, right? So this is actually a mono track, so I can't import it into this stereo track. So I'm going to get rid of the stereo track. I just hit the little X in the top left corner of that track, and it made it go away. And I'm going to actually tell it to bring a mono track. So this is, I'm going to make the in the top right corner, I'm going to make my window smaller again so we can see both these windows. And so it comes in with only one instead of 2 lines. And then this track over here, you can click in it, the one that you want to bring in, and then double click it to select the whole thing. It turns all white. And then you can copy and paste just like you would on any other program. Control C, or you can use the edit menu. I use the shortcuts, Control C for copy. And then when I go into this, into my original file, I just click back on the original Audacity I was working on. Maybe I make it big again with the maximize button. And then I click kind of close to the beginning, and I use the arrow key to make sure I'm at the very beginning, because then you can see my playhead, see how it's moving around. I want it to be at the very beginning or wherever I want it to insert it. And then I just use Control V to paste it in. And it should paste in a second. It will take a second because it was a little bit larger file. Yep. I should have picked something smaller, but it's using the little hourglass because it's like, this is a lot of pasting. Normally you won't have to wait for it to paste, but it's gonna, eventually it will paste it in and show it at the bottom of this, in this audio file. Should have picked a music file instead. Come on, you. It might not like that. It's like, are you crazy? That's a lot of work. It's about an hour-long file. It was just the one at the top of the list of my audio files. Come on now. Oh, it might make me crash even. Dang it. So there we go. It didn't make me crash. It just didn't like it very much. So anyway, when I clicked back, the other window came up. So I just clicked back in on the window of that Audacity file so that I could again work in that original folder we were working in. And you can see it just pasted it all in. And I feel like I'm giving you too much information at once, but we'll go for this one last thing. This is a mono file. You really, if you're doing music, sometimes it comes in as a mono file. You really want it to be a stereo file. And in order to deal with it, if you get something that's mono or stereo and be able to incorporate it, you'll want to be able to turn mono tracks into stereo tracks. So what you do is you make another mono track, and you basically now have 2 mono tracks. And I just pasted, I'm going to do something a little different here. Give me a second, because I'm going to make this a lot shorter so that we don't have the problem we just had. So I just copied the short piece and put a short audio file in rather than pasting another long, hour-long thing into this. So basically, this is what I want to be in both of these mono tracks before I turn it into stereo, and I want them to be perfectly aligned. I want to double click on the original one, make sure that I've copied exactly what I want in this second area. When I click on that second empty track, I want to use the arrow to go way to the beginning so I know they both start in the very same spot. Otherwise, it'd be like an echo, right? They'd overlap. And then I paste, Control V, and I have 2 identical mono tracks. And once I have 2 identical mono tracks, I can play them like stereo so that when somebody's listening, they'll hear them in both the left and right speaker. Otherwise they'd be in their car and you'd be talking on your interview and all they'd be hearing is you in one speaker. It's weird for listeners. You totally want everything to be stereo track. So then once you have these two set up identically, then you click the little arrow here. Over here on the left, there's the arrow next to the audio track. And then when you click on it, it gives you an option to make a stereo track out of the two mono tracks. And once I do that, you see how they're married. They just join together. And now it's a stereo track. And you really want to stick with that as much as possible, because you want the sound to come into both speakers. So those are really the basics for all the things that you might run into. If things are too quiet, let's say this area up here, you know, I'm gonna just highlight an area on this track that's less big of a waveform than the rest of it. You can amplify things with the effect menu, and you go to the effect and you pick amplify. And then you can use this slider button to either make things quieter if that was your issue, or make things louder. If it's too loud and it's distorted, you can't get rid of distortion this way, but you can make it louder. As long as it does not have allow clipping check marked, which it will by default does not, it won't let you raise it until it's going to end up distorted. It won't let you amplify it too much. So, and you can see that it won't let me take it to 14 more decibels because OK is no longer highlighted. I can't click that button. I have to go down, and now it will let me go up 7 decibels, and I could bring it up that far if I wanted. And I just say, okay. So that's something you might run into too. You want to amplify. Let's say you do accidentally bring in something too quiet and you need to amplify it. That's one of the ways to do that. So I think that we're going to go with that as the lesson of the day, because that's a lot to take in all at once, but it's more or less everything you need to know. When I save the project, I'm going to save it. I recommend that you work at figuring out how you want to organize your files ahead of time. You know, make your Citywide audio file folder so that you're saving it someplace you know you can find it later. That's pretty important. And then it'll tell you when you save an Audacity project that you are not saving an MP3. You are saving an Audacity project, not a single audio file. All of these tracks will be available to modify later. And so then you say, okay, because you know you're saving a project file that you can come back to later. And then, so then when you say, okay, it's going to ask you where you want to save it. I'm not going to do anything extraordinary because I'm not going to say keep this file, but you name it. I recommend that you name things with a date and a name. And I often recommend you name it with the year first and then a hyphen. And then if it's May or June, then you say 06, then hyphen, and then 21. And if it's only the 5th of the month, you say 05. And if you date them that way, when you look at your titles, you'll be able to know, they'll show right in a row. If you date them with the year first, then the month, then the day, and use the zeros, then everything you record, you'll be able to see it in a row of chronological order of what you've recorded, which can be very helpful when you're trying to look at what you've got organized in those files. And then, of course, you know, a title that tells you, we often tell the youth involved in our program to put their name and then the topic, so that, you know, you even get the name of the youth that made it right there in the title. Don't have to listen to the audio file to figure out what you're looking at, which is kind of important sometimes. So then you just hit save, of course, you name it and you save it. And then that's saving the project file. And if I want to save the audio file, I'm all done, I'm ready to export it out, then as an audio file, then I say export instead of save project. and I export an MP3, and it's basically the same thing. I pick the name, I tell it where I want it to go, and you want the quality to be 220 to 260. That's what we do. That falls into the best quality you can really get on the air because of what the audio quality goes out in our transmitter as. So that keeps you up as, extremely good audio quality, even as an MP3. And then you can see if you click save as type, you can see there's a lot of other choices to what you want to save it as. But I would suggest, for the most part, you're probably going to want to be saving MP3s. And then you just hit save, and it will tell you that it's not a project, and it's going to be mixed down, and it will be one stereo track file. It won't have all of the tracks with all the options for editing later. And so it warns you every time, so you know what you're doing. And when you save an audio file, it gives you the opportunity to identify the metadata. And I recommend you do this because it's also very helpful for people looking at your stuff later. And fill in the artist. I always use the track title as the same thing I title the file with itself. I use the date, the name of the person, and the topic. You can use underlines to separate, pieces if you want. I recommend you don't use backslashes because programs can misconstrue backslashes, and you especially don't want to title your stuff like that for KEPW, because we have a program that moves things and it has to not have special characters. So using underlines is the best way to go. Often for the album title, I would name your show name. Citywide would be that, the album, Las Voces. And then I even put the year down. And sometimes, like, if you have music, but it's a talk thing, but you add a couple songs, you can put the names of the songs in the comments so that it's really easy for you to remember what songs were on that show. For if you do single shows and they're not, the songs aren't identified because they come in a big long file with a lot of other content and the song is just part of it, we're supposed to know whether if you played something that was licensed. So having it in the comments really helps, because otherwise, how do you know what was there? And if you start doing that as a habit, we have to have you keep track of it on log so we can report it. But basically, fill out all that and then say, okay. And then you have officially saved either an MP3 or a project file, whatever of those two things you're attempting to do at the end of a work session. And that is it for just about everything you might want to know initially for how to work with recording a file. And then I just think that maybe it might be nice to follow this up with how easy this is at the end. Once you have this file, it should look like this. This is an MP3. It shows the little album. So this is an audio file. Once you have that file, you can send it in an email, but you can also load it straight up to your show and have it play automatically, which is the best way to go. And I want to show you how to do that real quick, because this would be basically the last step. Once the kids are done with their show, they would go to Dropbox.com and just open up a browser. Oh, come on. First, I got to get it to let me in. Maybe it didn't like that I didn't give it its www. What is going on? I'm gonna try again. Let's try with a different browser. That was strange. So you basically just go to your browser. See, this is, I swear this is the same thing that I was just at. Why is it not? Of course it's not, because we're recording. Sorry, this is odd that it's not letting me open up Dropbox. Why? I might have, maybe it's because I'm on the share. For some reason, it's not letting me into other things. That doesn't even make sense.
Could you unshare and then try it and then come back?
Yeah, let me just see for the heck of it if it's not going to let me into anything or if it's just Dropbox. Huh, that's interesting. I do not. It may be that Dropbox is having an issue. Yeah, it's not my connection. Huh. Well, basically, I will send you a link. I can send you the link, and then the link on your computer should just open up Dropbox. And then once you've opened it, you just double click on the folder that is whatever it is that you're trying to upload. If it's a voice folder, a voice track, there's a separate folder for that. And then there's a folder for non-local and there's a folder for local music. And all three of those folders I shared with your Citywide email address, the Citywide at, yeah, whatever that Citywide email address is. Anyway, that is shared there. And then if you double click on the folder, you should get an empty screen in the middle. It has buttons that say upload, and you just hit the upload button and you navigate to the file that you're trying to upload. And if you want, I believe there's also a little space in the middle of the screen that will say drag and drop. And you can even drag and drop your folder to upload it. And once you say you want it to upload, it will show a meter that'll say when it's finished uploading, if it's going to take a little while. So that's the verbal description of what I was trying to show you. Sorry about that. But that's, I mean, it's pretty well that easy. When you put something in Dropbox, at least, especially to start with, email me and let me know so I can make sure that it's there correctly and everything is working right. And that is very helpful. And then the other stuff for music that I was showing Janeri, I mean, I don't know if you want to, maybe we want to separate the recordings at the very least, but I can show you that as well next. So let me go ahead and stop the share and stop the record.